My grandfather, with the name of Hazrat Munshi Imamuddin, he was the first person who accepted the promised Messiah ﷺ in 1902. My grandfather was, mashallah, very dedicated to Ahmadiyyat. He was a companion of the promised Messiah. He did the Bai'at. So with that background, he was so firm in his faith that he immediately decided to dedicate his son. As a matter of fact, he has mentioned that I decided to dedicate him even before his birth. So in 1910, he took my father into nearby village with the name of Karyam, and there the community members in that area, they used to offer their Jummah prayer. So after the Jummah prayer, my grandfather, he presented my father to the people over there, and he said, "This is my son." He was only 6 years old at that time. "I have dedicated it for the service of religion and Ahmadiyyat." So I request everyone to pray for him, and particularly I wish, because of the background that he had, he was saying, and he said to the people that especially pray that my son, this son of mine, should become so capable that he is able to defeat Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari, who was a staunch opponent of Ahmadiyyat. So that was at all the members of the community, they joined and they prayed for that. It is mentioned in our records that in 1910, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, he paid a visit to Jalandhri area, and on his way back he also passed through this very village, Kriha. At that time, my grandfather, he presented his son to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II and told him that this is my son, I have dedicated it even before his birth, and now he is 6 years old, so kindly put your hand over his head. And Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, he very graciously put his hand over the head of my father. And after that basic education, when he finished, then his father, my grandfather, decided that he should take his son to Qadian for further education. So when he went to Qadian, then he was immediately admitted into Madrasa Ahmadiyya. There he started his education. So that is very quickly going over his early period of his life. As far as I know, and I have heard something from my father as well and read, the thing is that when my father started writing articles as a missionary as well later on, the articles, mashallah, they were very good, very convincing, very beautiful. People used to enjoy that. Many people mentioned to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, and once it is mentioned that Hazrat Khalifatul Masih himself has also mentioned that your articles are very good. We enjoy that. But when we come to the end of the article, where the name of the writer is there, that we read Allah Ditta, which looks a bit not so common a name, and as if we breaks the spell of reading a very interesting, useful article. So better the name should be changed. So some people suggested different names. Somebody suggested name should be changed to Ataul. But Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II did not agree to this one. He said this is name of a very well-known, staunch opponent of Ahmadiyyat. Therefore, that name should not be there. So anyway, at that time, later on, when my eldest brother was born, his name is Ataul Rahman. So then looking at that, and also considering that when he was about to go to Middle East for the preaching purposes, the people over there, they generally call the people with their title, kunyat. So therefore, instead of the name, something else should be added there, and that was appropriately thought to be Abul Ataa. The father of Ataul Rahman was the son at that time, and the 3 other brothers who were born later on, all having the name of Ataa. So that is how it came. So initially the name was Abul Ataa Allah Ditta Jalandhri. Then when he went there, mostly he started writing Abul Ataa Jalandhri. Allah Ditta was dropped. And later on in India as well, it continued like that. But anyway, older people, they still remember, and sometimes they use, and sometimes it comes as a surprise as well to even some members of our family as well. Sometimes they are surprised to hear this name being mentioned, that this is the name of your father.
Another incident that I remember, one time he was telling us in the afternoon that during the first or second, very beginning debates of his early time, he went to a small town for a debate. At that time in India, there were the system of debates, and the first speech was made one person, and the second from the opponents, and last speech was also made by the person who claimed. So my father went to a small town, and the people were surprised that he was a representative from Jamaat at a very young age. When the debate was started, the last speech was to be done by my father. But before he started the speech, there was a crowd who ran to the stage, and they broke the chairs and tables, and they messed up all the Jalsa program, and he could not make the speech. He was very upset on his way back with other people, and they stopped for a while during their way, and they started their Asr or Maghrib prayer, whichever the time. And my father told that he was very upset that he could not make the last speech and to convey the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat, and was very upset at that time. And when he finished the prayer, he saw two men were waiting for them to finish the prayer. He asked them why they are there and what is the purpose for them. And one of them said, I was sitting at the back rows, and I was listening all the talk that the people were doing, and they were talking that we will not allow the Ahmadi person to make the last speech, because if he made the last speech, all the people will be converted to Ahmadiyyat. This was their point of view, because they will understand what is the reality. And I was listening all the program, and I am so much convinced that I want to do my best. And this was the first fruit that my father got.
Actually, the fact is that my father is well known in the history of Ahmadiyyat as a very competent and a powerful debater. He was a speaker, he was also a debater, and he had, as a matter of fact, I must say, he was given this faculty by God Almighty, that he was able to answer the questions in such a way which were appealing and dumbfounding the people and satisfying for the believers. So that ability was demonstrated throughout his lifetime, as early as when he was just a young boy. And when he started his activities, it was in 1927 when he became the missionary. He went into the field, and he held his debates with so many people. Among them was Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari as well, regarding whom his father has wished that he should be able to defeat him one day. And he encountered him many times, and Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari was defeated in those debates. There is one incident which comes to my mind, that once when my father was just only, say, 23 years old, and Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari was nearly 60 at that time. So they came face to face in a debate. And the style used to be that on one side, in the middle, there were people, and on one side, Ahmadiyya stage, on the left side, the non-Ahmadi stage. So when they sat face to face, Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari, looking at the small, size of my father, who was just a young man at that time, he just exclaimed, and he used the word, "Aap to munde hain," that you are just a small lad. What are you going to do? Are you going to compete with me? Are you going to debate with me? You are just a small lad. Now the Ahmadis were wonderstruck. What will be the reply to this, statement which he has made? My father stood up, 23 years of age, and he replied that the people who killed Abu Jahl, they were also munde like this. They were also lads like that, young lads. Now Ahmadis, they were so happy that such a crisp remark and rebuttal to this statement was given there, and all the people, they also realized that this boy may be very young, but he's going to do something. So that was one of the style of my father, he used to, always very precise and very strong and very effective in dealing with the criticism of the opponents. Here I would like to mention another incident, and that is also a very landmark in the life of my father. And that was that a debate was arranged between Ahmadis and non-Ahmadis in Batala. And they had published the posters beforehand, in which they had mentioned that we are going to have this debate with Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II or somebody who is appointed his representatives. And that was published, and the Jamaat agreed somehow that they will say that, it will be taken there. So when my father, he recalls, and he has written, that when I was just about to leave for Batala, I met Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II after the prayer when he was going back to his residence. And I mentioned that, Huzur, I am going to Batala for this debate which is taking place. Huzur knew it very well. But he asked my father, you please just stay on here and wait for me and stay here. Huzur went inside, and immediately he brought a paper, and on that he has written a statement. And he handed over the statement to my father. And he said, is that all right? So when my father looked at that, he was completely out of emotions and overwhelmed with emotions. Because what Hazrat Khalifatul Masih has written, one part of that, one sentence was, in the wording, I quote, he said that, Inka sakhta pardakhta kulli taur par meri taraf se samjha jayega. That whatever he is going to decide, whatever he is going to do, whatever he is going to say, that would be entirely on my behalf, and I will be in a way responsible for that. So that was the statement which he gave to him, that this is my authority, a letter of appointment, and you are going in my, on my behalf, and you are going to have the debate with that. So my father has mentioned this incident many times, and I remember every time he became emotional and overwhelmed. That was the confidence of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, that he said, whatever he does, that will be on my behalf. Those days, he once, I remember, he used to mention that part of his age, from the year 1927 to 31, before going to Palestine. In those years, he was so busy in these debates that many a time it so happened that he went to one place, and there he got a message from the center that after finishing this debate, you move to that place. So he would go there and then come back to Qadian. And sometime it so happened that he would come back to Qadian, his books were all in a box, and even before opening the box, the next instruction would come that now you go there. So continuously he was on the move from one place to another. He was very much in demand, and by the grace of Allah, he performed a very historic role in the history of Ahmadiyyat in that respect. My father left for Palestine, and he was covering in those periods the Syria, the Egypt, and some other neighboring countries. So he was the headquarters was in Kababir at that time. So he went there, and that was in 31, and came back in 36. So far as the works which he did, there are quite many. He started the madrasa there. He started the printing press there. He started the monthly publication of Al-Bisharatul Islamiyya Al-Ahmadiyya, a magazine in Arabic. And also he produced the literature against Christians, against Baha'is and other people. So that literature was also published in that press, which was now owned by the community. So in this way, a lot of very significant activities were there, and he spent a very busy time. And if I go into that detail, that will be perhaps too long. But let me at least mention one incident which is very faith increasing. And that is that my father mentions himself, and I have learned from him directly, also read in some of the books of the Ahmadis. Musa Asad Ode Sahib from Kababir, he has also mentioned in his book. The incident is that one day after a meeting, my father was coming back to Kababir all alone, and he had to walk through some jungle. And as he was well known, and there were some opponents of him as well, they wanted to kill him as well. They were looking for some opportunity. So incident so happened that while my father was walking through a bush area, he heard some people whispering to one another, but he just turned his neck, but he couldn't find anybody. They were hiding. Actually, they were sitting in ambush. So he ignored them. He thought perhaps might be some rabbit is here or something like that. Anyway, he went, he was reciting the Quran and praying in his own way. When he went a bit further, he heard the gunshot. One, and soon after that, another one. He was surprised. He said, might be some people are, shooting at that time. So he came back and everything was over. But he did not realize at that moment that what a critical stage he has passed through. Later on, there were two people. These people, they came sometime later to the members of the Kawabir Jamaat, and they told them the whole thing. That we were the two people who actually sat in ambush for this person, the missionary of Islam, Ahmadiyyat. And we had purchased brand new guns, shotguns. And before his arrival, we knew the timing, we tested both the guns. The guns were absolutely all right. One cartridge was put, it went off. The other one, it went out. So everything was okay. So we were just waiting for the moment. So when he came and he was just in our range, one man tried his gun, it didn't go. The other, he was very much upset. What happened? The other man tried, it didn't go. And we were utterly disappointed and surprised. And he went away. And when he went away, then we again tried to, open the fire. It was all right. The second one tried, that was also okay. So that is what happened. So that is a very inspiring instance in his life, that how God Almighty saved those people who went out of their homes in order to do the service to the religion. And anybody who goes out of his place, actually it is Allah Almighty who becomes his helper and guide. He is the protector. So
by the grace of Allah, in our house, a lot of guests were coming anytime without any previous information. So my mother was always ready for the hospitality. Sometimes my father came to home after the Asr prayer, and he talked to my mom that he has invited 10 or 12 people for the tea party, and he forgot to tell you. And at that time, without any hesitation, my mother was ready to accommodate all the guests and to serve all the good things for them. I remember the time when Hazrat Khalifatul Masihul Rabi Rahimahullah visited Toronto, and at that time I was living in Brampton. My mom was also here, and Hazur asked two questions to my mother. One question was that Maolana Sahib was very excited to invite people for dinner or tea or any time. How did you manage all these things? Because sometimes I noticed I was coming with him to your house, and some other people were also coming, and he also invited them. And how did you manage more than the more people at that time? My mother laughed and said, she said that whenever he used to tell us that he has invited 10 or 12 people, I used to make the arrangements for 20 people. So Huzur was very happy that this is the thing. My mother told me an incident that once she had severe headache and she was very sick, and my father prayed for her and then came to my mother and said, I was praying for you and I heard the voice, overwork. It means that you have done a lot of work, and the cause of your headache is the overwork. And my mother was very happy at that time that Allah knows that she is doing so much work at the house. And then my father told her to do a little bit less work, so inshallah you will be fine.
This is another area which is very, very profound and very vast and very elaborate. The thing is that, alhamdulillah, I must say that my father was really a man of pen. And he made use of this ability, completely dedicated for the service of Islam and Ahmadiyyat. He has written more or less, big and small, all-inclusive, nearly 100 books. That includes even small pamphlets altogether. And I would like to mention about the monthly publication of Al-Furqan. That my father started very early when he used to live in Ahmednagar near Rabwa, and it continued until his demise in May 1977. For 26 years, it was in service of the Jamaat. It was his personal venture. All the expenses, he was responsible for that, although the contributions were there, but they were not enough. He had to make his personal contribution all the time. But the quality of the magazine was so much literary that the members of the Jamaat, whenever they heard any criticism anywhere, they would send that to my father, and he would write a reply, and that would be published within a month. I remember once the non-Ahmadis criticized that why we have given the name of Masjid Aqsa to the mosque in Rabwa. So in reply to that, all the Ahmadis were waiting what reply would be coming. So my father arranged in such a way that the Ahmadis in various areas of Pakistan, wherever they happened to see a mosque with Masjid Aqsa, its name written, they took the photograph. And nearly 20 photographs were published in the next issue of Al-Furqan, along with a detailed article explaining everything. So that was the way how this magazine was working very efficiently. And Alhamdulillah, it was a great tool of tabligh and reply to all the allegations which the non-Ahmadis raised. Here one very interesting thing comes to my mind, that once I happened to go on Waqf-e Arzi to Murray Hills, and my respected teacher, Mir Mahmud Ahmad Sahib Nasir, and Farooq Sahib from Multan, they were also there. So three of us, we went together. And one day we decided to go to deep down into the hills near Kuldanna, into a place where the seat of the Moda Sharif, Pir of Moda Sharif, that was his residence, and we decided that we should go and see him, just to convey the message of Ahmadiyyat. So we three went down. It's a long story. Steep hill was there. So when we arrived there, we were received by the attendants, and we were immediately taken to the Pir Sahib. He was a young man with beard, nice complexion, well-educated person. He received us very happily. Mir Sahib introduced about Ahmadiyyat, and then the discussion started. But during the course of the conversation, at one time, that Pir Sahib is pointed out that you are telling me about Ahmadiyyat, but I know quite a lot about Ahmadiyyat. We were surprised. And then he, the rug on which he was sitting, he lifted one corner of that, and underneath was a copy of Al-Fazl and a copy of Al-Furqan. He said, these two magazines, they come to me regularly, and I am a regular reader of these, so I know all about Ahmadiyyat, what you are doing it, and I appreciate this and that. So when he was told that regarding myself, that I am the son of the editor of this magazine, he was very happy, and he shook hand for the second time. So anyway, what I want to say is that the impact of Al-Furqan was so that even the non-biased scholarly people, they used to study that, and they used to benefit from that. So that was a very big contribution of my father, I can say, that in the propagation of the message of Ahmadiyyat in Urdu language, and it was coming regularly, and it continued up to his demise. I would say that the only thing which has enabled him to get this honor, that was purely, entirely the mercy and the blessing of Allah. This is the real answer to this one. But this mercy and blessing of Allah Almighty had definitely gifted him with certain qualities. And those qualities were appreciated by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II when he gave him the title of Khalid Ahmadiyyat along with two other great stalwarts of the Jamaat. That was during the Jalsa Salana in 1956, when there were some hypocrites in the Jamaat. They were trying to disturb the minds of certain Ahmadis and spreading rumors and allegations, all that. At that time, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, in a very strong voice, I was present in that Jalsa myself, I listened it myself, he said, addressing to these hypocrites, that do you think that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid lived a long time ago, to defend the cause of Islam, and no more such people are there. Even God Almighty has gifted me with such great, defenders of faith. They would, shatter all your arguments, and they will reply to all the allegations that you are raising against the community. Then he mentioned the name of Maolana Jalaluddin Sahib Shams, and name of my father, and Malik Abdurrahman Sahib Khadim. So, and then he prayed that Allah Almighty enable them and give them the life to carry out their duties like that. So that was the background of that. But here I would like to mention one thing, that as I said, that I was present in that meeting when this title was given to him. I came back, and naturally my feeling was also, I can't describe in words, because that was a great honor bestowed upon my father. When I came home, sometime later my father also came. So my mother was there, other family members, and my father was carrying a bag in which he had brought some sweets to commemorate that, because that is the normal way. Whenever something good, you distribute the sweets. So on his way back, he purchased that and brought. Anyway, the sweets were left there, but then he sat down, and then he started slowly, talking and mentioning. And that was a moment when very rarely I found my father. He was, he could not speak, or he could not express his feelings. He was short of words at that moment, because he was full of emotions, and tears were rolling down on his cheeks. He was very emotional. And always his style was that he used to say that, "Oh Allah, how can I thank you? I was just a young lad in a small village in Kriha, not well educated, but you gave me everything, and you gave me this honor today, that the Khalifa of the time has declared me as Khalid Ahmadiyat." So he could not, express himself fully, but in broken words he expressed. And as a matter of fact, everybody in house at that time, they had these tears of gratitude in their eyes. So that was a very, very emotional thing, and that is how he was.
At one time, as a Khalifa al-Masih said, Rahmahullah, was to travel from Rabwa to Islamabad. It was going to be for about 3 or 4 days only. But you see, as tradition demands, when the Khalifa is not at the base, he appoints somebody as Amir Maqami. Amir Maqami means the one who sits in for the Khalifa. And I went to the Masjid Mubarak for prayers. It was, I believe, Maghrib prayers. And after the prayers, he called me and told me that I'll be traveling, and I have decided to make you the Amir Maqami. Tears began to flow from my eyes. And because I thought I never deserved this type of, honor as well as blessed position. But what surprised me most was that the following day, when he was due to travel, he sent a letter to me in writing, signed by his private secretary, in which he had said that he was appointing me the Amir Maqami and Maulana Abul Ataa as my assistant. I nearly fell down, unconscious, because it is something unimaginable that a person who was my principal, a person who has been so kind and gracious towards me, if he had even been made the Amir Maqami and I, as his assistant, I would still consider it to be something very, unusual. But for me to be the Amir Maqami and for him to be my assistant was something that baffled me completely. Now, it was a Friday, and that Friday we needed to ensure that the Friday prayer service was organized. So I went to his house, and I told him that this is the information I've got from Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih. He said, "Yes, I know it because a copy of the letter was sent to me. So what about that?" I said, "Today is Friday and we need to organize the Friday prayer service. So I have come to request you to lead us in prayers. He said, no. You have been appointed the Amir Maqami, so it is you who must lead the prayers. I said, no, I can't. In your presence, I will not be able to lead the prayers. He said, well, it is you are right, but if you ask me to do it, you are giving me an instruction to do it, then that is an order, then I will have to obey. Because this is what Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih has said. And I was really baffled, because it doesn't generally happen. Somebody who has been your principal, in every way he is superior to you. And if he's made you assistant, it could be just a formality. But to take it literally the way he took it, and be prepared, to more or less not only cooperate with me, but to take whatever I would tell him and do accordingly, is something that can happen only because Maolana Abul Ataa was somebody who believed very, very strongly in the institution of Khilafat. So I told him that it is a request that I'm making to him to lead in the prayers. So he said, okay, I will do it. When we went to the mosque on Friday, Maolana Abul Ataa announced, before he delivered the Friday prayer service, that in actual fact, Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih had traveled out of Rabwa. I was the one who had been made the Amir Maqami. He is an assistant. And it is under my instruction that he was leading in prayers. Now you can see for yourself the humility of this person, despite his greatness. By then, he had been given the title of Khalid Ahmadiyat. So nobody had any doubt at all whatsoever about his scholarship, about his greatness, about his expertise in handling, human beings and handling the affairs of the Jamaat and so on and so forth. And if he could be so humble as to take the word of the Khalifa literally and go by it, then it is something which is a matter of great resolve.
There is another thing which comes to my mind, and that I would like to share with all. And that is when, after the completion of nearly 5 years of tenure in the Middle East, when my father came back to Qadian, that was another memorable day in his lifetime and for us all. And that was that on the railway station, in order to receive my father, Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih II himself graciously arrived. And he waited for the train to come. The train has not yet come. It was just a few minutes away. He arrived there, he waited, the train came, and then got it slowly. And now you can imagine a missionary coming back to Qadian after nearly 5 years. Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih, the gracious father, he was very anxious to meet such a dedicated servant. And the dedicated servant on his side was also becoming out of control in a way, how to go into the hands of his master. So it is mentioned, and this report is carried out in one of the newspapers, that the train slowed down. Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih also moved a little bit along with that. And finally, a point came where the train stopped. And my father immediately, as if he wanted to jump down, he immediately came down from the train. And first and foremost, he had the honor of embracing Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih. What were the emotions on both sides at that time? Allah knows better. But it was an embrace of gratitude, an embrace of appreciation. After that, another thing happened. There were a lot of people there who were at the station. So my father, naturally they wanted to meet my father. So all of them, they started shaking hands, some embracing him. Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih II, he stayed on the platform of the railway station until all the people have met him. And when everything was over, then Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih asked my father to sit with him in his own private car, and then brought him to Darul Masih, where my father went to the mosque, offered the nawafil, and then he went to his home. And I have mentioned the whole thing very briefly, but I think there is an ocean of emotions in this narration, in this incident. And what would have been the feeling there of my father, that I have come after my humble services That was a part of my duty. And how gracious is Khalifatul Masih that he personally came to receive him. So that is an indication that his services was not only dedicated to the community, but the Khalifatul Masih was also appreciating his services. And the relationship of love and affection and kindness was on both sides. So that is something very important and very historic in the lifetime of my father.
मेरे भाइयों ने कहीं से ना मछलियाँ पकड़ी, जैसे जाते हैं बच्चे, अहमद भाईजान, शाहिद भाईजान, अताउल, मुजीब फिशिंग करके आए। वो छोटी छोटी मछली थी, बहुत छोटी होती है। तो अम्मी जान हमारी मरहुमा बहुत मज़े की मछली पकाती थी। उन्होंने मछली पकाई, बहुत मज़े की थी, सब ने खाई। लेकिन मैं ज़रा शायद बिगड़ी हुई थी लाड में, मैं कांटे वाली मछली नहीं खा सकती थी, छोटे छोटे कांटे थे। मैंने ना खाया, खाना ना खाया, और मैं ऐसे ही ना नाराज़ होकर तो सो गई। जब घर आए अब्बा जान ने शाह की नमाज के बाद, कोई मीटिंग के बाद, तो अम्मी जान मरहुमा ने बताया कि आज आपकी बेटी ऐसी सो गई, उसने खाना नहीं खाया। पूछने लगे क्यों नहीं खाया, कि मछली कांटों वाली हमने पकाई थी तो उसने खाने से इनकार कर दिया। अब्बा जान ने कहा लाओ खाना कहाँ है, अम्मी जान ने दिया गर्म करके। मैं सो रही थी, बड़ा मुश्किल होता है बताना, जज्बात ऐसे होते हैं, यादें आ जाती हैं। तो अब्बा जान मेरे पास आके बैठ गए, बिस्तर के पास खाना रखा हुआ ट्रे में, कांटे निकाल के मुझे खुद अपने हाथ से उन्होंने खिलाया। उस वक्त का लुत्फ और उनका प्यार कभी नहीं भूल सकती।
Another thing I will like to tell about the true good relationship with Allah Almighty was then when he was about to leave Qadian and he was going to Palestine for the Tabligh, he was very much worried about the family he was leaving behind, and he prayed to Allah Almighty to give him strength and steadfastness and to help him in the way of Tabligh. At that time he told my mother that I have heard the voice, जो खुदा के लिए घर छोड़ता है खुदा उसका हो जाता है. Whosoever leaves his house for the sake of God, Allah helps him, Allah is with him. So he gave this glad tidings to my mother that don't worry, Allah will be sufficient for you and me during my stay in Palestine, and he will take care of you and the family also.
I would pick up that his prayer to God, link with God Almighty, and his entire trust in Allah Almighty. That was so much that I think that covers all the aspects of his life. I just give you some examples. In our home, whenever any member of the family, me or my brothers or sisters, they wanted to have some money to get from father, they would go and say that we need this much. My father would put his hand in the pocket, and very often it came out empty. There was no money to give. And he would say, okay, you come tomorrow and I will give you. So next day we would go and the money was there. So we used to always discuss between ourselves that what is this magic? When we go there, the pocket is empty. He says, come tomorrow, I will give you. And next day the money is there. So what happens during the night? So sometime we used to say that perhaps our father has got a minting machine which he operates during the night, and the money is made available. And I think we were right. He had the minting machine of the prayer, of the tahajjud prayer. And that he used to, at that time he used to pray, and Allah Almighty used to provide all these things. My mother relates that once they went to Kashmir, and on their way back they had to go because the leave was finishing. So he asked the whole family to get ready, and they boarded the bus because the payment was to be made at the end of the journey. Money was not there. No money was there. So, but he was confident that something will be done. So on the way, the bus stopped near the post office. He went to the post office and found out, is there any letter or anything for me? There was a money order waiting for him. The money arrived. So out of that money, he paid the expenses and he was back in Qadian. So in this way, all these things are happening there. Once my mother relates that when he went to a Jummah prayer, members of the Jamaat, because the weather was very hot, they requested him to kindly pray. that we should have the rain because it's getting too hot. So my father, along with all these present people, he prayed. And then when he came back, my mother narrates that my father went out of the built-up area, in the open area, right in front of the rooms, and he took off his shirt and sat down on the charpai, on the cot there. My mother asked him, what is this? And he said, today we have prayed for the rain to come. And now I am sure that the rain, inshallah, is going to come. So I am waiting for the rain to come. That's why my posture is there. I have taken off my shirt. And very soon the cloud came and it was the rain. So his confidence on one side and the blessing of Allah Almighty on the other side, all these things are there. And similarly, there are other things which I would like to say, that he was in a way very sure about the revelations and the informations which used to come to him. One interesting thing I want to say is that once when he was not feeling well, he specially prayed and asked Allah Almighty, kindly tell me how much is my life, how long I am going to live. And he narrated, and I am personal witness to that one. He said that I was shown a big bottle, just like the juice bottles, and there was a label on that. In the bold letters, it was written, Sharbat-e-Zindagi. This is the syrup of life. And underneath the wording was, Ye sharbat 75 baras tak karamad rahega. This syrup will be valid for up to 75 years. He said that I was very happy to see that dream. But particularly I was grateful to Allah for the word useful, karamad. That I was sure that I am not going to be just here in this life doing nothing. But I will be doing my job and duties up to the last moment. And he passed away, according to the lunar calendar, at the age of 75.
I remember the day when my husband came on 8th of June from office, and I asked him, is there any letter for me? And he said, yes, I have a letter from your principal, and you can open it and you can read it. I was very happy, and I opened the letter, and this was the condolence letter on the demise of my father. The same day when I received the news, and I was crying all the day and night, few moments when I had a little blinking of my eyes. There were little bit time that I slept, and I saw my father in my dream at that time, and he was helping me to be patient. So I cannot forget those moments.
डॉक्टर साहब घर नहीं थे, ये आए, इन्होंने फिर मुझे बहुत हौसला दिया, हिम्मत दी। इनके वाले साहब पहले फौत हो चुके हुए थे, तो इन्होंने बताया कि ऐसे ही होता है जैसे आपको सदमा हुआ है, लेकिन हमें ये मिल के बर्दाश्त करना। उन्होंने कहा कि वो मेरे भी अब्बा जान थे, आपके ही नहीं थे। सारी जमात ने इतना तावन किया, इतनी हमें सपोर्ट दी, यहाँ लंदन जमात ने, अल्लाह ताला सबको जज़ा दे।
Well, as you have mentioned that this was most tragic occasion, but unfortunately I could not know that immediately, instantly. I am talking of 1977. In those days, telephone facilities were not so easily available. Other means of communications were also not there. So it so happened, I was in Japan in those days, in Tokyo, and I got this news about 4 days later. I mean, nowadays it's a surprise for people, but it happened that way. I went to the General Post Office, and there was a post box allocated for my mail, and when I opened it, it was full with a lot of papers, and on top there were some telegrams. So I opened up. The telegram was from Khalifatul Masih, one was from Tabshir, and one from here and there. So some letters were also there. So that was how I came to know. And you can just imagine, I can't describe in words what would have been my feeling at that time. I was standing in the post office, nobody along with me to talk to. And suddenly I have this bombshell in a way. And I felt as if, the roof of a room, when it is blown away, that sort of thing was there, that roof is no longer with us. And also I consider and profoundly consider that my father was a trier of prayers for us. And I'm sure that he is still, because the relationship, according to Islamic understanding, that remains with those who leave you there. So I wish that this relationship should continue and we continuously get the blessings of our departed ones. So I believe that he was no doubt a living trier as long as he lived. But his wishes, his desires, his prayers, they are going to continue for us all, and may they continue forever.